Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Trump Reads, and in this video, we're going to be doing a book review of Garro, Weapon of Fate by James Swallow, and this is book number 42 of the Horus Heresy series, which is kind of like a prequel to the lore of Warhammer 40K, that universe, if you guys know what that is. Now, like I said, this is book number 42. However, this is the first book that I've read in the Horus Heresy series. But I'm really glad I picked it up in the store. I found it, like I said, on sale, and I was just kind of like, you know, what the heck? It was $4. I just want to try something different, and I'm just really glad I walked out of the store with it because I really enjoyed the story. I kind of went in with kind of a stereotypical, kind of pessimistic, kind of like idea about like Warhammer or something, but this book definitely changed my mind on that. Like I said, just really pleased to have actually sat down and read it, go through it, and then lo and behold, now I have, I think, 12 or 13 Warhammer Horus Heresy books. But basically, the Horus Heresy, if you guys don't know what that is basically a galactic civil war where the Imperium of Man is basically fighting each other, and I just said basically like 4 times in about 20 seconds. But essentially, the Imperium of Man is engaged in a civil war where half of the legions, or the Legiones Astartes, which are the like superhuman space marines, as you can see here with like their mech suits and power armor and stuff, are fighting each other all across the galaxy, stuff like that. And what this book obviously does is follow some of the adventures of Garro after the flight of the Eisenstein, which is an earlier episode in the Horus Heresy, which I should read. It's like book 4, but I kind of halfway know what happens now because after reading this one. But anyways, most of them you can kind of read out of order. Like, I didn't feel like I was completely lost. A lot of the like important stuff is kind of like reiterated a little bit, so I wasn't like completely left behind with everything, which I thought was really well done. This book is essentially a bunch of short stories, like an anthology of short stories surrounding Garro. Now, Garro was formerly a battle captain of the Death Guard, which was the 14th Legion of the Imperium. However, Mortarion, the Primarch, or the leader, like the superhuman, basically, of that legion, the Death Guard and Mortarion joined Horus in treachery against the Empire. However, Nathaniel Garro chose to stay loyal to the Emperor and to the Alliance, so he was basically obviously outcast and had to basically fight against his own battle brothers and stuff. So what we're doing here with Garro, Weapon of Fate, is basically after his return to Terra, after his legion's betrayal and everything, he's almost sort of, ostracized from society because, he was a former Death Guard. The Death Guard are now super traitors to the Imperium. He's not, obviously, with the rest of his legion. He's essentially a traitor to his legion, traitor to his Primarch, and kind of has like that shadow over him the whole time. So essentially, he's almost like on his own. However, he is recruited by Melchador the Sigillite, and I have no idea why I just said his name's like so weird. He basically gives off this like super Darth Sidious vibe. However, he's like kind of this weird super mega schemer, but for the good guys. Essentially, he's the Vizier. I guess that would be. I don't know what his actual title is. Oh, hold on 1 second. I call him like the Vizier for the Emperor, because the Emperor's always like behind the scenes now. All right, Sigillite and Regent of Terra. But anyways, Malcador essentially lists him as his Agentius Primus, for a new order called the Knights Errant, and the Knights Errant are going to be almost like a small squadron or legion of space marines from traitorous legions who remain loyal to the Emperor and to the loyal legions. So I thought that was kind of a really cool concept because he's still loyal to the Emperor. However, his loyalty, it's not necessarily a book on loyalty, but it's kind of like the sorrow of when like your loyalty has to be tested in ways that it doesn't necessarily have to be, and when bonds are broken, and kind of like the aftermath with that. I thought that was really interesting. The only like negatives I have with the book are some of the short stories almost give more the impression that they're repetitive in a way, where Garro kind of goes out to like either a planet or a situation or an event or something, and has to go out and recruit a new knight errant to the Legion to take vows from Malcador the Sigilite. However, at first that's kind of what I thought it was going with, and the first half of the book is kind of like that. However, afterwards it kind of doesn't necessarily stray from that too much, but definitely expands on that, and it's not like the same thing over and over again. And there was one story where I was like, oh no, after about a quarter of the way through that short story, I was like, oh no, this is going to be like the most obvious trope ever. And then towards the end, I'm like, oh no, it's happening. And then it turns out there's actually like a really nice twist on that trope, and I was like, that was actually really well done, especially since this is the first book I read. I don't want to give anything away with that, and so yeah, I'll leave that one at that. Plus, also, now that I've read the first 2 books in the series, Horus Rising and False Gods, there's a return of one of the characters from those books in one of these ones that I was not expecting either. And I thought that was really well done as well. Alright, so overall, I really enjoyed it. The pacing is excellent, like lots of stuff going on. It's not like battles and, just guns blazing every 5 seconds, which is good, because that kind of gets boring after a while in its own way. But it was kind of a good mix of lots of different kind of scenarios going on, with like hostage situations, basically peace talks, then like huge battles and like stealth missions. All kinds of stuff is kind of going on. Alright, now with the Horus Heresy books, kind of what I want to try and do is read like a quote or a passage that I really liked from that particular book. Just try and keep that going, maybe. This one really stuck out to me in this one. So here we go. Garro stiffened. After I tallied all the things I lost in order to prove my allegiance, he began. My legion, my brotherhood. I told myself that the next man who dared to suggest I was disloyal would bleed for it. Ah, but your promise contains a fatal flaw, Malcador replied, ignoring the threat. You begin from the assumption that loyalty is a fixed point, immutable once established. And then the Sigilite broke off and turned to look eastward, his eyes narrowing as if attracted by something only he could perceive. After a moment he turned away and continued, speaking as if nothing had happened. But it is a flag planted in the sand, Nathaniel. It can, it will drift under the action of outside forces you may never see, until you are challenged. You were loyal to Mortarion until the moment you were not. You were loyal to the War Master until you were not. You are loyal to me. I am loyal to the Emperor, Garro corrected him. And on my life, that flag will never fall. So I thought it was kind of a cool little quote, or kind of like little conversation that they had. Obviously, it's longer than that, but that was kind of like the gist of it right there. So overall, I really enjoyed, like I said, the book. The action's really good. The pacing's really good. I'd say like the only kind of weakness is some of the characters, since you're not really introduced to them for very long, are kind of, I would not say caricatures. Like Garro is really fleshed out, I think, quite well. But a lot of the other characters, since they're kind of like short stories and you don't really see that much of them, are kind of flat. But I will say a lot of the characters probably make appearances in other books, so when you put them all together, it makes probably a much more faceted like approach to them. So it's not, just kind of like one-dimensional that you get with these short stories. So like I said, this is book 42, so a lot of the characters have appeared in other books as well. So like I said, character is a little bit weak, maybe. The main character not so much. Pacing's really good, action's really good. Overall, just a really good short story collection. I was definitely impressed with it. Like I said, going into it, I had kind of a cynical thought process with it, but I'm really glad I just sat down and actually read it. Just highly enjoyed it, and now I'm reading a lot more of the Horus Heresy books, so there you guys have that. So overall, I'm going to give Garro, Weapon of Fate, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I encourage you guys to maybe check out the Horus Heresy if you guys like sci-fi or science fantasy. It's definitely a good blend of science fantasy, because there's obviously like the sci-fi elements with, the space or starships and spaceships and warp travel and bolter guns and laser guns and all that stuff. There's also like fantasy elements. Like one of Garro's like main weapons is a giant sword called Libertas, which is kind of cool in its own right. So there are some fantasy elements as well. But overall, like I said, 4.5 stars to Garro. And always remember, whatever you end up reading, read victoriously.